Today, we do a deep dive into race relations within the United States, specifically looking at the latest Atlanta spa shooting, a teen Vogue staffer who was fired for using the N-word, and the college admissions practice of using letters of recommendation is racist. These stories and more in your March 22nd Not So News update. Please like and subscribe if you're looking for daily news content, and let's dive on in. Starting us off, we're going to be looking at the latest Atlanta spa shootings and the nature of them being hate crimes. We have two stories that seem to be contradicting each other on the nature of this crime, and we look at how this is affecting the United States standing on race relations with other countries. From the New York Post, feds have no evidence yet that the Atlanta spa shootings were hate crimes. This was reported as of March 20th. The Atlanta spa shootings may not meet the standard for federal hate crime charges, authorities told the Associated Press, reported Saturday. 7 of the 8 victims in Tuesday's attack on 3 massage parlors in the Atlanta area were women. 6 of those women were Asian. The deaths have called new attention to the rising number of hate crimes against Asian people in the past year and on the treatment of women involved in sex work. Investigators have not yet ruled out hate crime charges, the AP said, but there are legal requirements to be met. Prosecutors must prove the victims were targeted because of factors like race or gender to meet the standard according to federal law. Something that I've really not been able to understand, and someone in the comments might be able to help me out, is why we actually treat hate crimes as worse than normal crimes. Is it significantly worse for someone to be killing individuals at a spa because they're Asian or woman, rather than just it being wrong to kill people in a spa? I don't personally think that there's a significant difference. They're obviously both very terrible, but they seem to both be bad for the exact same reason. Nonetheless, from the story we see here is that there has not yet been presented any evidence that the perpetrator of the crimes on the spas was doing it with the intent to target Asian or women, and so far it seems like it was just an act of rage. But if you look at this MSNBC Opinion piece, the Atlanta shootings can be both an anti-Asian hate crime and a sexist one. A young white man is accused of making his way across the Atlanta metro area on Tuesday night, shooting and killing 8 people, 6 of whom were Asian women, at 3 spas. It was an act of obscene hatred towards women and Asians enabled by America's lax gun laws. After his arrest, the accused gunman, Robert Aaron Long, told investigators that his attacks were not racially motivated, that he blames the massage parlors for providing an outlet for his addiction to sex. The Cherokee County Sheriff's Office said in a statement Wednesday, "There's a world of unfortunate things to unpack from that line, a process that will take time. It also requires an understanding that this is an intersectional act of hatred where one strand doesn't negate the others. If taken at face value, though, there are numbers of reasons not to the suspect's statement is a declaration of misogyny as an excuse for his alleged actions. There's a logic of a person who sees a woman as objects for his own gratification. It's a logic of someone who sees those victims' deaths as a requirement for its own salvation." There is absolutely no evidence for that particular statement. It's the same sort of dehumanization and hatred towards women that we've seen time and time again from men who see violence as the only recourse to deal with their own rejection or shame. I think what we can truly see in this type of story is something that I've kind of had as the theme for why most political actions happen, why most racial and why most hateful actions happen, is most individuals are just looking for a content and an in-group. What we see in political violence is people that are doing violence based on an in-group that they've found a home in. It would be best for us to create homes that are de-radicalized in, the center of mainstream discourse, and we don't want people to be requiring to go to sex parlors to find the only sense of, relationship that they can possibly have. However, in this piece, they talk about the lax gun laws, and this is also being reported by Warnock by The Hill. Warnock is saying that reasonable gun reform is a necessary response to Atlanta's shooting. In the article, Senator Raphael Warnock, he was one of the Democrat senators just elected, on Sunday called the Georgia legislature to pass reasonable gun reform, adding that hate was likely a factor in the shootings at 3 Atlanta area massage parlors owned by Asian Americans last week. Warnock pointed out on NBC's Meet the Press that the suspect in the 3 shootings allegedly carried out his attacks on the same day he purchased the firearm used in the attacks. "We need reasonable gun reform in our country," he said, without specifying what measures he would like to see passed. this shooter was able to kill all the folks the same day he purchased a firearm. I think this suggests a distortion in value when you can buy a gun and create this much carnage and violence on the same day. But if you want to exercise your right to vote as an American citizen, the same legislature that should be focused on this is busy erecting barriers to that constitutional right, he said in reference to ongoing effort by Republicans in the state to restrict absentee ballots. As they noted in the article, there was no specific measures being mentioned to be passed, and it's hard to know what he means by reasonable gun violence. If the issue is that someone commits a crime on the same day to buy a gun, the only way to reform that is to make it so individuals cannot buy guns whatsoever, because there will always be a day that they eventually get that gun. I don't know what standard you could possibly pass to make the events that happen in Atlanta not happen again without making it so owning guns altogether is illegal. Going on the Daily Caller, we have a tweet from them congratulating Aaron Rupar for having his misrepresentation of a police officer's word featured in a Chinese propaganda. If you remember in the statement by the Atlanta police chief, he was quoting the suspect of the shooting, saying yesterday was a really bad day for him and this is what he did. A law enforcement officer explains Robert Aaron Long's decision to kill 8 people in a strange manner. This obviously was not the police chief giving justification for the text, but explaining the motive of the suspect, because that was asked at the press conference. However, the Chinese Chinese state affiliated media, China Xinhua News, 8 lives taken, 6 of them Asian, and the killer was just having a bad day. I think it's quite ironic seeing the Chinese state attacking Americans for racism, as the Chinese state is really one of the most racist nations there is. If you remember, they are the ones perpetrating the Uyghur genocide camps. Also, there's been many crimes against African Americans in China. My favorite is that they have a commercial for a laundry or a laundromat that has an African American individual go in, get washed, and come out Asian. So let's just say that they do not exactly have a leg to stand on, so to say. Speaking of hate crimes and language, from the Gay Times, Love Simon star Keiynan Lonsdale reveals preferred pronoun is tree. At the end of the day, everyone is a tree. Keiynan Lonsdale has revealed their preferred pronoun is tree rather than he. The Australian performer, I'm sorry I'm butchering his name, who is best known for their starring roles in The Flash and Love, Simon discussed pronouns with fans during a live Q&A on their Instagram account. Keiynan clarified, okay, this might sound stupid, but I don't care. I don't think this is offensive, but I don't want to go by he anymore. I want to go by tree. I want people to call me tree because we all come from trees. So it doesn't matter if you are a he, a she, or they or them. At the end of the day, everyone's a tree. I want to call my friends tree and me tree and everyone tree. So I think that when people ask me what my preferred pronoun is, I'm going to say tree. I'm not hi, by the way. This is just me. There's a couple issues with this. To start off, evolutionary speaking, you would have to go very far back to say we have any relationship with the modern day trees, because the animal and vegetation evolutionary split happened very early, so to say, speaking in terms of the evolutionary progression. So to say you are a tree is not exactly correct, let's just say. Also, this kind of obfuscates the purpose of pronouns, when the purpose of pronouns in general is to have a way to summarize someone's name. Rather than saying George or Joe or Jacob, you say he, because he is just the general that you get to say substitute any male name. And when we start to obfuscate the purpose of pronouns by just coming up with random ones like tree or the other ones that have been popularized by the LGBT movement, they start to lose their actual purpose of pronouns, and it becomes almost easier to just use the person's name instead. Notably, that might be their purpose. Looking at other hate crimes based on language, from the New York Post, teen Vogue staffer who opposed hiring of Alexi McCammond tweeted the N-word. If you remember, in the last couple of weeks, the teen Vogue ended up getting ridiculed for the hiring of Alexi McCammond, and it was based off of racist language. However, a senior Teen Vogue staffer who opposed Alexi's hiring as editor-in-chief over troubling tweets as a teen had herself repeatedly dropped the N-word in online posts, according to the report. Christina Davitt, a senior social media manager at the Condé Nast mag, had earlier this month made public a letter by staff complaining about McCammond's hiring in light of her own past racist and homophobic tweets, according to Fox News. "So proud of my Teen Vogue colleagues. The work continues," Davitt wrote in a post on her social media that has now been made private, just hours after McCammond announced her resignation, saying that her tweet as a 17-year-old college student had overshadowed her work since then. David wrote on a tweet, "Exhale the deepest sighs I ever had," Fox noted. Yet David, who calls herself a queer, fat, Philip Hinks femme in Brooklyn in her Instagram bio, still had up all posts of her own in which she repeatedly dropped the N-word. Fox said she has at least twice referred to a friend who appears to be white as a N-word with the soft A in 2009, and next year also used the same word in a joke, tweeted, Fox said on messages since made private. David is a mixed Irish and Filipino descent, her messages said. Notably, what I think we see here is just how obscure our rules on language have become. I personally think anyone thinks it's okay that if you said terrible language, over 10 years ago, heck, if you even said it a year ago, if you've since recognized that the language you used was bad and you've asked for forgiveness, I think it's time to move on as a society. I think notably, this is one thing that religion has gotten very right, which is, the practice of reconciliation, the practice of confessing sins and moving on. At some point, we need to stop worrying about things we said, decades ago and be able to move on with our lives, and you should allow others to move on as well. Finally, coming from NBC News, this college admission season, let's end the odious racist practice of recommendations. I long for a day when my work can speak for itself, when I can simply apply for whatever I want without having to ask anyone else to vouch for me. Letters of recommendation have aggravated me for more than 20 years. Today, at the spring admission season draws to a close, I break my silence. Having been on every side of the letter of recommendation equation, requesting them, reading them, writing them, regarding them, and disregarding them, I now call for an end to them, not just at academic institutions, but at every institution that has historically discriminated against applicants on any basis besides merit. Shameless tributes to America's long-standing commitment to inequity, letters of recommendation belong in the dustbin of history. Like many great villains, these mandatory missives seem harmless enough at first glance. Decades before I began writing letters of recommendation, I was an ignorant and arrogant public high school student who genuinely believed that my favorite teachers would all be honored to write them for me. To the eternal credit of they name them, who to date represent 3 finest educator I have ever encountered, that's exactly how they made me feel. So I never considered they would also countless other students' favorite teachers, or they were widely overworked and underpaid, or that we, their adoring pupils, were all effectively punishing them for being outstanding at their job. They continue to go on about how as an Irish American Muslim author, attorney, and professor living with a disability, this is no surprise to me, because I know letters of recommendation are precisely designed tools of oppression, glaring treatments to our nation's racist, sexist, classist, ableist, heterosexist, cis-normative, nepotistic power structure. These letters serve to disadvantage the already disadvantaged and privilege the already privileged. They continue on their rant, essentially under the basis that people in minority status won't be able to get good letters of recommendation. So, in my response to this, if you're unable to get a good letter of recommendation, you might want to step back. You've had probably about 5 teachers every year for at least your 4 years of high school, which means you have 20 choices. Let's just even cut back a bit. You might have the same teacher a couple times, so you at least have 15 possible references. If in those 15 teachers, you're not able to find one that you found any connection to, the problem is not your race, your sex, your political views, or anything. It is you. If you're not able to find one that even remotely likes you at least a bit, you are the problem. And this is something we might want to be teaching our higher school students, that one day they will need a letter of recommendation. They might not want to just be a jackass to every professor or teacher they have in school. It is time to stop blaming others for your falling short and not being able to find someone that's approved of. However, one thing they do hit is that this is a punishment to the good teachers, and I would hope that the high school programs offer some type of reward for teachers that are asked to do letters of recommendation, and that is one thing I can get behind and something that I would hope to see in the future. And this is your March 22nd Not So News update. Once again, please like and subscribe if you're looking for daily news content, and have a good one.